Don't repeat. Don't repeat.
Welcome to the Simply Charlotte Mason podcast. I'm Sonya Schaefer, and I'm joined by my friend and coworker Laura Pitney to do another episode of Your Questions Answered. This question is quite interesting. It goes like this. You say not to repeat yourself, but I'm wondering how you teach this. I have a 5-year-old. Let's say I get her attention, look directly into her eyes, and tell her, go put your pajamas in the laundry. She starts the journey, but gets sidetracked on the way there. 5 minutes later, I notice her pajamas on the kitchen floor beside her while she's playing with a toy she found on the way. How do you handle this situation if you don't repeat yourself? This is my life right now. Even my older girls are guilty of similar behavior sometimes.
Yeah. That's a tough one.
It is. It is.
It sounds like she's doing the right steps as far as making sure the child's looking at her and making sure she's hearing her, but it's the follow-through.
Yes, yes. And I think one helpful thing with that follow-through is in order to get that habit established, in the first few weeks of getting that established, I think mama needs to go with her.
Yeah.
Say, okay, go put your pajamas in the hamper and walk along beside her to help her stay on task, to help her brain keep moving forward.
Sure.
I know that's going to grate a lot of mamas the wrong way. It's like, I don't have time for that. I got to be doing all these other things.
Right.
But hopefully it will only be for a short time.
Yeah.
And just think, if you get that habit established.
Right, then you won't have to be right next to him.
Exactly. And you'll reap the benefits of that follow through.
Right. In other areas.
Yes.
Because it would apply to other areas.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. So I think going with her is going to be one good benefit.
What are your thoughts about, okay, your child is looking at you, you have the eye contact, you're telling them what to do, you're saying, okay, did you understand? And they say, yes, ma'am, or do you think there's value in having them repeat back the instructions that were given to them?
Sometimes, I think so. It's almost like a form
like
of
comprehension,
narration. Yeah, exactly. And it takes away any excuses they have for, I didn't understand, or, I didn't hear you, or something like that. So I don't see a problem with having them repeat it back.
Right.
If you want them to put it in their own words, you can, or put it in your words. But that way, there's no miscommunication.
Yeah.
And that's an important adult skill, actually.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
When you're having a conversation with your spouse or something, a lot of times people say, tell back the person what they just said to make sure you understood it correctly.
Right. Another thought with that is, not all of us have smart aleck kids, but some of us do.
True.
And so for us to say, all right, go put your, as you would say, pajamas. I'd say pajamas. Go put your pajamas.
This is Sonya. You say pajamas, I say pajamas.
As I'm telling my child to do that, they'll say, yes, ma'am, I understand, but because I didn't say when to do it. So clarifying that I want you to go do this right now or before you go play with the toy. Clarifying when you expect it to be done, because that, again, might come back and say, well, I was planning on doing the pajamas in the hamper, but I was going to do it after dinner. So not that they shouldn't just obey immediately and with a happy heart, but, every once in a while we have that smart aleck kid that's going to see the loophole in the instructions. Right. So even being more specific of when you expect it.
And I understand that and can be very helpful. There's also, on the flip side of that, that you cannot think of every potential loophole they might come across. And so we might need to, at some point, have a little heart-to-heart on attention is, I love the definition, listening with the ears, eyes, and heart.
Yeah.
And what do you think I'm telling you?
Yeah. Read between the lines here.
Yeah, you know me. What do you think my intent is here? What is it? What's the end goal I have in mind?
Right.
I think that, and a lot of that is your whole relationship with your child, keeping your hearts turned toward each other.
Right.
It's an ongoing process.
But it's one of those situations where you may say, go put your pajamas in the hamper, and they'll say, yes, ma'am, and then they may say, what did you say to do again? Because obviously all kids struggle with the distractions.
Yeah.
So getting back to the question of how do I not repeat the instruction to begin with, I have found that sometimes, I'm like, well, what did I tell you? Putting that responsibility back on them to go back in their mind to what I had originally said versus the temptation just to repeat it because that's the quick, easy answer. So the habit in ourselves to put that responsibility back on them.
Yes.
I know you heard what I said. You were looking at me. You said, yes, ma'am. So think hard about what I told you to do.
It makes me think of Winnie the Pooh, Which part did you get the fluff in your ear? Which part did you not hear? And you might even say, tell me what you do remember.
Yes.
Which part do you remember?
Right.
Just to help them draw it out.
Right.
I think another helpful thing is to motivate them to pay full attention, to pay better attention, is to have consequences ready to go.
Right.
Consequences are so hard to have specific and powerful in the moment.
Yeah.
I get requests all the time for, can you just give me a list of consequences?
Right.
And you can't.
Right.
Because it depends on the situation, the background, Is this a one-time occurrence?
Right.
Or is this a perpetual thing? Is this a personality? Does the child have auditory processing issues? There's just so many factors.
Right.
But mamas, I think, are in a unique position to understand their children better than anybody else. So I think they can find those consequences if they stop and reflect and think about it ahead of time and have a few in their tool belt, if you will.
Right. Well, natural consequences are usually there. It's just us understanding, well, in her example, the child got distracted by a toy along the way. So the natural consequence would be probably to take that toy away or to not let them have the toy until the responsibility is done. So the natural consequences are usually there. But like you said, to have a few that are on hand, for instance, maybe, oh, well, you didn't obey this time and you know what I expect of you. I told you and you chose not to do it. So that means a 30-minute earlier bedtime, or trash duty this week or,
extra chores.
Especially when they're old enough to understand that they made a choice not to obey when they did hear it and everything, but...
Or if the child has gotten distracted and you walk across the room and she's playing with a toy, you can take the toy, but rather than saying, I told you to, that's the repeat part we want to avoid. Take the toy and say, you have not done what I told you to do.
Yeah.
That's it.
And then you wait.
Then you wait, because sometimes they have to, it can be awkward, and you pray a lot while you're standing there, too. Another mom that I read recently mentioned an interesting consequence that she does that kind of is a multi-use consequence, where if she gives the child a task to do, and they get distracted and they don't do it, they have to come back and do the task twice.
Oh. All right.
So in the pajama instance,
get it right.
The PJ instance, the mom would find the daughter there. You could take the toy and say, you did not do what I told you to do. Let's go do it together. We go, she puts the pajamas in the hamper. You take them back out, take them back to the kitchen where they started from, put them down and say, okay, let's do it one more time, start to finish.
Yep.
Just to practice doing it correctly.
I think that's a great idea, especially if you have younger children that really you're trying to form that habit of listening and for yourself not to repeat. I mean, hands-on is so practical in that way. I had an instance this week. It wasn't only the non-repeating, but it was something one of my daughters was already trained to do. The examples, I asked her to dust the living room. That's something we've practiced. She has grown up dusting the living room. It's nothing new that I've asked her to conquer. But the heart of it was the integrity of doing the job well and doing it without me having to repeat myself or repeat the instructions because she knows she's older. And so It so happened that I noticed this big streak along one of the pieces of furniture that was very obvious. I could have wrote my name in the dust, unfortunately. Good house cleaning here. So I asked her, I said, did you dust that piece of furniture? And she said, yes. And I said, well, I provoked her, first of all, which took repentance on my heart. I'm like, well, I know you didn't do it because I can still see the dust, So it was a learning lesson for both of us. But anyway, us bringing up what she missed in the instruction and her understanding that, okay, Mom told me to do something. I listened. I heard it. I'm acting it out, but I didn't do it thoroughly.
Yeah,
and so as the kids get older and we struggle with the repeating and the instructions, it's almost like there's an added component of, like you said, with, what was your definition of attention?
Listening with the ears, eyes, and heart.
So right now, I'm on the heart side of things.
Yeah.
For the younger kids, when you give instructions, they can hear it and they can do it, and they're like, yes, I conquered it. But it's more out of loyalty and respect to you as their authority figure versus as the children become older and really develop their own personalities and who they are as young people. That's really where I have seen the heart issue come into play, to where, she did the job. It was dusted, but it wasn't that integrity component that we've really been working on. Actually, that's been one of our habits lately, to where, I want her to do what's right when nobody's watching. And to dust every component of what was expected of her was part of that.
Yes.
And so I know our questions about the habit of not repeating ourselves and our children to do it, but that's multi-layered, really,
yes,
with
it is.
The attention. And I'm just in that phase of life right now where the heart is my concern and not just the conformity of the outward. And with the younger ones, it's easy to make that happen because they're ready and willing, most of the time, besides when they throw the fits on the ground, but, ready and willing to...
Just that little part of it.
Yeah. They're happy to please you. They want to please you, especially those preschool years and, younger, 6, 7, 8-year-olds. But when you start getting a little feedback and they have this inner war with themselves almost of, okay, I've been trained. I know what's expected of me, but then there's this fight of selfishness to want to do it their own way, or I wonder if I do this, what kind of reaction I'll get from Mom, today. So,
or as they're getting older, they're starting to view it like we do sometimes as mamas, where it's like, this is a never-ending thing.
Yeah.
I'll do it today, but I'm just going to have to do it again next time.
Right.
And so they might be thinking it's futile in a sense.
Right, and helping them navigate those emotions and those thoughts and to counsel their hearts to where there is the right response where they want to obey and they want to do what's right, and they don't want to have to say, what'd you say? We want them to benefit the fruits of all those years of labor, and yet it's still a struggle for them.
Yes.
A struggle for me. I mean, she even mentioned how, we expect these things of our children, but how do we change it in our own life when it's a habit we struggle with?
We have trouble paying attention ourselves.
Yeah.
That was another part of the question. Yeah.
So how would you answer that?
I think it's going to take small steps, but it needs to... Number one, we don't just throw up our hands and say, well, that's just the way I am and I can't improve. Because Charlotte Mason talked about, it is pleasant to know that even in mature life, we can, now I'm paraphrasing, but we can form new habits with a, quote, little persistent effort. Yeah, a lot of persistent effort.
Something a little.
Yeah. But I think one thing that can help adults especially is to take it in tiny steps. So I'm going to pay full attention to this particular thing, or when my child is talking to me, I am going to set aside my phone or set aside the potato peeler or whatever we're working on, and I'm going to look her right in the eye and give her my full attention. Just those little steps that we can keep working on in our own hearts and lives. In addition to that proactive, we can start examining our lives for areas that are sabotaging those efforts. If we're continually doing social media all the time, that starts a cycle in our brains
Right.
that shortens our attention span because
Right.
we're looking for, if a notification dings, boom, we're there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's taken our attention away from what we were working on.
Right.
That, as well as getting enough sleep.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
When you're fatigued, it's hard to pay full attention.
Right.
Just the idea of using different parts of the brain as you go through your day,
Yep.
so we don't clean the whole house
Yeah.
top to bottom in one fell swoop, you
Yeah.
know? When
Yeah.
you're going to clean this and then let's go do something else
Right.
for a while.
Right.
You know what I'm talking
Yes.
about. But just those same principles that we talk about with teaching our children the habit of full attention, I think with a little reflection we can tweak them and apply them to ourselves.
Yeah.
And just remember, it's a process. You're not going to just flip a switch
Right.
and suddenly have full attention.
Right.
We all struggle with it at different times of the day,
Yeah.
let alone of our lives.
Right. I definitely think consistency on our part to be a good example on the maybe even the habits that our children are struggling with, whether it's a weakness of ourselves or not. You know, this example being not repeating, which lends to full attention to a certain degree. You know, unfortunately, that burden rests on our shoulders to really try to be a good example. Like you were saying, when our child needs our attention, to drop what we're doing and give them our full attention as an example to them that they should do the same to us. So it just kind of goes hand in hand, which is a beautiful thing, and it shows you how the family works well together, and you all make mistakes and you all fall short, but yet you're there to encourage and uplift and keep at it. And you know, for this mama to feel like she sees a struggle in her children, and then yet to see the own struggle in her own life, that humility is such a beautiful thing, because you're never going to improve if you don't admit the problem, you know,
Yes.
and you don't get on the same page together as a family, which goes back to how important habits are, and to do them as a family and not expect everything to be perfect all at once, but a refining process almost.
Yes.
With that.
And Charlotte talked a lot about mental sympathy.
Yeah.
That, you know, when you are in the same boat,
Yeah.
you're not going to come down with a sledgehammer on your child.
Right.
You're going to understand
Yeah.
how hard it is for that child, too. Doesn't mean you're going to excuse it.
Right.
Doesn't mean you're going to just say, well, we're not going to work on that.
Right.
But you can empathize with them.
Right.
I thought of one more way we can be a model, and I hesitate even to bring this up.
I'm ready.
But it's like, okay, conviction time.
Yeah.
How many times just yesterday did my husband say something to me and I said, what?
Yeah.
That just came to my mind.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, now I could play the card of I'm getting older, I'm getting harder to hear this, but
Yeah.
no, it's
Yeah.
we need to watch that aspect too.
Sure.
It's not just with our children. It's with other
people
people
around
in
us.
general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Good words. Well, how about you? Do you have more tips and comments to help with paying attention, teaching our children to pay full attention, not repeating ourselves?
What was that?
Yeah, I was just going to go there too, yeah. We'll go back to don't repeat yourself. What did I say?
Don't repeat yourself.
Okay.
Got it.
If you enjoyed this podcast, feel free to subscribe through iTunes, Google Play, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app so you don't miss an episode, because we're not repeating them. You can also subscribe to the audio version of this podcast or read the blog post on our website at simplycharlottemason.com. All of those links will be in the notes. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.